Brian, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining me.
Mike, great to be here. Thanks for having me on.
100%, 100%. Been looking forward to this. So, dude, for people that don't know you and your story, give us the spark notes. Who you are, where are you coming from, what are you doing now?
Yeah, so my name is Bryan Clayton. I'm CEO of a company called GreenPal. GreenPal is a mobile app. It works like Uber or DoorDash, but for lawn care. So if you're a homeowner or you rent a house, you've got grass outside, you need to get somebody to mow it, you just jump on GreenPal, pop your address in, and somebody comes and takes care of it for you. GreenPal is a 10-year overnight success. My two co-founders and I have been at the business for a little over a decade. But now we're nationwide in the United States, several 100,000 people using the app, and it's going well. But the first few years were really, really challenging.
Dude, I love it. 10-year overnight success. That's really what everybody means when they say overnight success. They just don't want to say it because they want to hear the instant gratification.
Yeah, there never are any overnight successes. Usually it's 7 or 10 years. Maybe it was called something else, or maybe that entrepreneur was doing something else, learning, and they rolled all the learnings into the thing that did work. But it never is. It never is a year, 2 years. It's always
Yeah.
7 or 10.
That last part that you just said is really, really curious to me. And like, I wish more people thought about things like that. Um, I like it's always a culmination of the work that you've put in and the
Right.
experiences that you've generated. Like, I think about through my journey, like in my corporate days, I knew I was never going to write code for a living, but I knew that I wanted to understand technology because that would have a massive role in whatever businesses I would build long term. So I'm like, hey, what value can I get here? And at the time, it was like the tech we owned sucked. It was like really tedious, annoying, not fun to write code. If engineering was the path I wanted, I probably would have left 3 years before I did. But I'm like, you know what? I get to work with a lot of third party consultants. That's a miserable experience. I can generate really good soft skills right now, you know?
Exactly.
Um,
Exactly. And that laid the foundation for the next thing.
100%. And I think about that in like all the businesses that we build. It's like, man, I don't really know that I'll probably coach and consult for my entire life. I probably just won't charge for it down the line. But like right now, it's phenomenal personal development. And the person I will become building this business is going to create everything else and take that to the moon. I think it's a really powerful way to think about things. I wish people like really embraced. I hope they go back and listen to how you worded it because we really need to embrace that. Um, what were you doing before you got into this? So obviously GreenPal's been going really well, decade in, um, which is really impressive, which means that you were like on the cutting edge of that type of tech, especially in the lawn care space. What were you doing prior to that? Like, have you always been an entrepreneur? What did that kind of look like for you?
Yeah, I've never had a job. I guess I was lucky. I was forced into entrepreneurship when I was 15 years old. My dad got pissed off watching me play Super Mario Kart all day, and he said, "Hey, get off your ass! I've got a gig for you. You're going to go mow the neighbor's yard." And I wasn't living in a democratic household. This was a direct order, and he made me
Yeah.
go mow the neighbor's yard. And luckily, he did that because I remember I got paid $20 for like a half hour's work, and in 1995, that was a lot of money, and I
Yeah.
was hooked. I was just hooked on owning my own business, and I never looked back. I remember the first thing I did was make a bunch of flyers and pass them all over the neighborhood. Little by little, grew that into a little lawn mowing business that I ran in high school, and then I ran it in college. And then when I graduated college, I had to make a decision: was I going to go into the job market like all of my friends, or was I going to be a lawn guy? I didn't really want to be a lawn guy. But I kind of saw it as my lane. I saw business ownership as my lane to maybe get somewhere in life that maybe wasn't accessible. And I just made a little business plan and little by little started working on that plan and built it into a real company, about 150 employees, and ended up getting it over 8 figures. One of the larger landscaping companies in the state of Tennessee where I lived, and then it was acquired in 2013. And so, growing that thing from just me and a push mower to me and like 100 trucks, I learned through the school of hard knocks how to get a business going, did it all wrong, and try to figure out how to do it right. And then after I sold it, I started to learn a lot about myself that, I was wired to want to be in the game. Like I went through this melancholy period where like a piece of me was now gone. And I no longer had this identity with the business, and what was I supposed to do with my life. And I thought, well, I want to get back in the game. Why, I see all these tech companies. Uber was just getting rolling then, Airbnb, and I thought, why can't I do that? It looks easy,
Yeah.
and it was naivete as an asset,
Hmm.
and recruited two co-founders and had the idea that there should be an app where you should be able to order a lawn care service like an Uber, and didn't know what I didn't know, but we just got in there and started working on it little by little, made progress, and now here we are today. So 23 years in kind of the one industry and from multiple angles. I think authenticity can be a competitive advantage. I knew the business, had the scars for it, and then I applied that to building a tech platform for it.
Yeah. That's interesting. So you were one of those rare people that started as like the what's the what's the terminology Michael Gerber uses? You were like the technician, and then you also were able to bridge the gap and become like a true operator and entrepreneur within the
Yeah,
space.
the E Myth. I lived the E Myth from start to finish. All the
Mm.
way from baking the pies, hating it, to building a bakery, to that's the metaphor in the E Myth is a bakery. Well, I had a lawn care service, and I was the guy cutting grass for a long time, and then got a helper, and then had 5 employees that were all doing the same thing, and there was no structure, and did all that wrong, and got upset, and then started hiring people and hiring the wrong people, and then I was a terrible leader, terrible manager, had to learn those skills. And so the E Myth, as a storyline, I lived that chapter by chapter. And if I had to do it all over again, hopefully I don't. But if I ever had to, I could probably do in 3 years what took me 15, because I
Yeah.
know all the mistakes now. But back then in the late '90s, early 2000s, we didn't really have access to a lot of the information and knowledge and education that we do today. So in many ways, entrepreneurship is easier today than it's ever been, because you can learn from practitioners who have done it and learn from their mistakes.
Yeah. I mean, hell, you could probably use Chat GPT to build your entire business somehow if you know the right prompts. It's so funny.
It's wild.
Yeah, a buddy, one of my best friends, who's my best man in my wedding, we were sitting at a cigar lounge a couple of weeks ago, and he was like, we were chatting about AI. He's like, dude, I'm so fascinated with it. Da, 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 da. And we like literally mapped out how he could generate a 6-figure side hustle with once the clients were generated, like client generation or creation would be the legwork, of course. But like once that was done, fulfillment would take like 5 hours a month.
Yeah,
Right. Like it's
I think it
wild.
can really accelerate. It can accelerate something that's working.
Yeah, 100%. Hell, I literally had it write out like JV agreements and like idea creation, idea generation for like naming of certain projects we were building, and like it spun them out instantly. So super, super cool.
What a great time to be alive, and what a great time to be an entrepreneur,
Yeah.
because now you don't have to pay an admin to do these things. You don't have to have that dead weight on your staff. You can hire talent, hire people who are really good at what they do, and AI can help streamline and accelerate them, like put them on steroids.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times, man, like, as an entrepreneur, you have all this baggage, that you have to carry along with you, whether it be a receptionist or bookkeepers or admins, people that don't contribute to the, necessarily to the customer fulfillment. Now with AI, maybe some of these things can get abstracted away, where we can operate more efficiently.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a really interesting idea, and I mean, everything's changing, right? It's like we no longer, I remember hearing Gary Vee talk about this probably like 6 or 7 years ago. It's like we're not going to be quizzed on all these different things anymore. Like you don't need to memorize things. Now it seems like everything is shifting, and I mean, I'm passionate about this because this is the coaching world in a nutshell, right? It's like, okay, if we want better answers, we need to ask better questions. So the learning paradigms now are how do we learn how to ask the right questions? Because we just need to get access to the information. I don't need to necessarily be the storage for it, but as long as I can go and find that information and I understand that creative thinking or creative problem solving, then I can go get access to any bit of the information that I need. Right.
Exactly.
Shifting how all of it's happening.
You still have to have the authenticity. You still
Totally.
have to have the real world experience, but the AI is like you on steroids. It's
Yeah.
not replacing you totally. Now, if you don't have any talent, don't have any skills, you've never done anything, it's going to be tough. So it's both, I think.
Yeah. I mean, it's like anything, right? It just exposes it. Like
Right.
if it'll get your foot in the door, but if you suck, the door is going to shut right there.
Right.
Right. So like, don't suck, I guess is
Exactly.
the
Because if you
idea.
suck, AI is going to replace you,
Yep.
basically. If
100%.
you're a rudimentary designer and you're just copying, the standard best practices, and you pump it out with Marvel or Envision or something like that, you're just doing what everybody else is doing. AI is taking that job.
Mm-hmm.
If you are a practitioner of user experience design, and you nerd out on books like The Design of Everyday Things, and you're always using new products to get inspiration, and you're always looking for ways to innovate with better product design, then you will make twice or three times the money,
Yeah.
because AI can't replace that. But
Yeah.
AI is going to replace all of the middle and below.
Yeah. I completely agree. I completely agree. Um, Dude, I'm curious. You briefly alluded to a period after you sold your company where it was like this identity crisis almost. Um, your baby that you had been building, you exited for what sounds like a very nice sum of money, well deserved. But now you didn't have the thing that your identity had been attached to for so long. Talk to me about what that period post acquisition looked like and like what the day to day looked like for you as you were navigating that.
Yeah, it was unexpected. I didn't expect to feel that way about it. I ran the business for 15 years and had grown it to a good size, and my people that worked around me were kind of like my family, and a lot of them had been with me since day one. So 15 years with these people. I was just a kid when I started it, so they kind of grew up with me, and they were really, really like family members. And so I didn't anticipate what it would feel like to be kind of divorced from that. And also, helping with the transition of the acquirer was really tough. It was kind of like, getting a divorce from the love of your life, but you still live in the house, with the new husband. And so that was weird. So just navigating that was unexpected. Nobody prepared me for that. And it was an identity crisis. I learned a lot about myself, that I really, got self-esteem from how my business was doing, and I took pride in how my business was treating its customers, and the reputation and the brand that we were building, and how really my business were just like a scaffolding around myself. And now that was all gone. And so I dealt with it by starting another company. I realized there's only so many beaches you can lay on. There's only so much time you can take off, that you have to have some kind of mission in life. And if you're not gaining ground, then you're losing ground. And next thing you know, you're sloppy. You're not as smart. You don't have the experiences. You don't have the knowledge. You're not as sharp. There's nothing causing you to read new books and listen to podcasts and to level up. And so that was gone, and I had to start another business. I didn't really want to, because the whole idea was selling the company was to kind of get out of the stress of running a business of that size. But man,
Yeah.
I jumped right back into it. But on the second go around, I built it the way I wanted to build it. I built it technology forward. I built it to be systems dependent and not necessarily people dependent. And so I really focused on trying to prevent a lot of the mistakes I made on the first business.
Yeah. I mean, it's like you were speaking about earlier, right? Like you were a culmination of everything that you learned up until that point. So all of a sudden now you're building this new one. Like well, we can go and beat our head against the wall to learn the same lessons over and over again, or we could just build it the way that we want.
Right. Yeah. And if I had not gone through that, I wouldn't have known. I wouldn't have known to build it this way. And
Yeah.
that was one of the things that kind of made me gravitate towards a tech oriented business, even though I didn't, because running a landscaping company is about as blue collar as it gets. I had three mechanics that worked for the company. All they did was replace motors and transmissions and lawnmower blades and things like that. And so it was about as blue collar as it gets. And I didn't want to do all that all over again. I wanted to try something new, but I didn't know the first thing about how to write software. I didn't know the first thing about how to design software. And one surprising thing is that I learned was that I could pretty much learn anything I needed to get going, whether it just be pouring over YouTube how tos, or taking online classes, or reading
Yep.
books, or listening to podcasts. That was a surprising thing to me, because I felt like I was this, and I had this title, and I couldn't be that. And one surprising thing that I learned was to not believe my own bullshit, and to learn that I could learn anything if I was sufficiently motivated enough to do it.
Yeah.
Uh, but none of that was fun. It was fun. The results were fun, but working, 10, 12 hours a day on the business, and then another 4 or 5 hours at night on yourself was a grind. The book The E-Myth, Michael Gerber talks about you work on the business and you work in the business, or at first you work in the business and you work on the business, try to build the systems, the processes, the routines. But there's a third element that doesn't get talked about very often, and it's working on yourself. So really, you're doing all three things. It doesn't matter what business you're in. You're going to have to work on yourself. You're going to have to become a manager. You're going to have to become a leader. You're going to have to become a product designer. You're going to have to learn how to build software. It doesn't matter, if you're in the tech business, you're going to have to learn these things. Or if you're in any business, you're going to have to work on yourself to acquire these skills to be in the game.
Yeah.
And it doesn't get talked about very often, but really you should budget time for that, like a day a week, when you're going from 0 to 1, because that's what it takes.
Hmm. Yeah. It's such a good reminder. Like, I mean, for me, that's been pretty much all I've done for the last 7 years. So like I forget that that's not the norm, I guess you could
Right.
say. Like it's
Doesn't
just
get
so
talked about.
ingrained. Yeah, it's so ingrained, it's just like, oh, I'm just gonna use that part of my day for reading. I'm going to invest that amount of our revenue into mentorship and masterminds and coaches, and like getting around those people. Like it's it's a good reminder for me, I guess I'm saying, because I don't think about that as often. And it's such a good point. Like it's always about who you become.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
person you become builds the
You
business.
level up. You level up alongside the business's growth, and that's one of the cool things about it.
Yeah.
It's like a video game, and you're working one level at a time, and you're getting these new skills and evolving along the way. Very few things you can do with your life will really, really force you to do that.
Hmm.
And running a business of any size, whether it's $100,000 a year business, $1 million a year business, 10 million and beyond, you will become a totally different person every 2 or 3 years.
Hmm.
And that's one of the neat things about it, is that and if you don't, then a lot of times you stall out. You just
Yeah.
get stuck at 500K for 5 years, and you're pissed off. You hate your customers, you hate your employees, and you're mad at everybody else but you.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, maybe you're the bottleneck. And this is just me, like, pointing the finger right back at me. I've been there, where I was the bottleneck. I had to level up. A
Yeah.
lot of it, boiled down to maybe leadership. I was a bad leader, and I needed to go learn how to become a decent leader and learn my leadership style. And I was the bottleneck at certain key points of the business's growth.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's the best personal development you could do.
It really is.
One thing that I want to highlight that you shared is you talked about how you could learn all these different skills, right? And you, again, it was kind of the identity thing, but it was almost like bucketing of skill sets. It's like, no, I'm the blue collar lawn guy.
Right.
Like I
Right.
build the business
I'm
there.
not an engineer. I'm not a product
Exactly.
designer. I'm this, so I can't be that.
Yep.
um, you got to break that down. You got to learn the 80/20 of these things. because
Mhm.
you're going to have to be, most every business now is digital. It doesn't matter if you're running uh, a dry cleaner or a coffee shop. You better be damn good at digital marketing and social media marketing and Google local marketing. So guess what? Now you're a digital marketer. No, no. I have the best hair salon in town. I'm a hairstylist. No, no. You better damn well be a digital
Marketing.
marketer too.
Mhm.
And so you got to learn these things because if not, your competition will, and you'll get left behind. And the good news is you can, and in most cases you can for free. You can learn the 80/20 of about a dozen different things that you're going to need to be pretty good at to make it in business.
Yep. Yeah, I always used to joke when I was in the engineering world. I spent like 7 years of my adult life writing code for a living, and I don't think people put engineers on such a pedestal. And don't get me wrong, like it's not necessarily an easy job, but I don't think people realize that if you're an engineer, like you really just have a master's degree in Googling. Like,
Yeah, yeah,
and it speaks to what we were talking about earlier, just the access to information. The
right.
amount of time I would spend just scrolling through, I don't know what the forums look like now, but at the time it was like Stack Overflow
Yep,
articles. I'm just
still
looking
is.
for one snippet of code that solves everything that I've been bashing my head against a keyboard for over the last week and a half, right?
Right.
It's just problem solving and seeing what works. And when you can just attach that with not bucketing your skill sets, right? And thinking, oh, well, that skill set only applies to building a blue collar business, boots on the ground, not some app, right? It's like, that's not how it works. Like the
Well,
skill
and
sets can
the thing
transcend.
being a good engineer taught you, and the thing you've seen in some of the greatest CEOs and founders started off as engineers and then became good leaders, became good product people, became good marketers, because really the engineering does get put on a pedestal because it's hard, and like you said, you got to go figure stuff out, you got to diagnose stuff and troubleshoot stuff. But once you've done all of that, learning how to become a decent copywriter in a hard weekend is not that hard. Learning how to behavioral product design is not that hard. Once you've done all of the hard stuff around engineering, you can learn all the other stuff
Mm-hmm.
pretty easy. And versus like if you're a marketer, it's really hard to go back and learn engineering.
Yeah.
I'd rather train an engineer to become a marketer than a marketer to become an engineer.
Yeah. It's just a different thought paradigm. And like,
Right.
I don't know. I'm
It's a
curious.
willingness to figure things out, I think, because you have to, and that's key.
Bingo.
Yeah.
Bingo. I think the biggest thing that I took from my engineering career was like really firming up and validating that impossible does not exist.
Right.
And what I mean
Finding the
by
solution.
that, yeah, what I mean by that for people listening is that you just need to find a solution, not doesn't need to be the most ideal solution. You need a solution and you can iterate on it and improve it.
Right.
But like if the business is telling you, here's $1 million, go figure it out. And you say, well, it doesn't work like that. And they're going to say, shut the fuck up and go figure it out.
Right.
Like find a solution, improve it afterwards. Don't prematurely optimize. Just find something that works.
It's a
And
bias towards action, I think, too.
yeah. And I'm curious from your perspective, Brian, like as you kind of dove into some of those things, what were some of the big takeaways from you as you were starting to revitalize this like problem solving and like learn these new skill sets?
Well, first off, it was I mean, to the average person who's never tried to learn the basics of any sort of engineering skills, it's mind blowing to once you start to really dig under the hood of how these things work, and how many different levels and layers of complexity there are to making this things we use every day work. And so your mind is blown, and you're almost really humbled. At least I was, that there's all these smart people that built all this shit, and it's like it's taking you 6 months just to learn how to use the stuff they built, so
Yeah.
you can build your own thing. and it's just mind blowing. Like if you've never, at least me, I was probably 33 years old. I had never been exposed to even HTML code, and so once you start to see that, get exposed to that, you're like, whoa, your mind is blown as to how complex these things are, and that becomes like kind of eye opening and humbling. Like the more you learn, the more you realize how much you don't know. If you don't know anything and you've lived in a box your whole life, then you think you kind of know a lot. But
Mhm.
once you start exposing yourself to these new concepts and trying to learn just basic JavaScript, trying to debug even a website, trying to like do these things yourself, you start to get humbled as to how hard this stuff is. And if you can reframe it and get interested and get curious to get better and better, then, after a year of doing that, well, guess what? Like I became the world's shittiest front end engineer, but at least I had enough skill set and knowledge to sit at the table with a group of other engineers who were 10 times or 100 times better than me, but at least be able to have that conversation and to guide the team on where we were going and where we we're directing our firepower. Had I not done that, we wouldn't be here today. And my co-founder did too. My co-founder went to a software boot camp and learned how to build a server side. And looking back, trying to build GreenPal without any engineering talent is kind of like it's kind of like, you can say, I have an idea for a song, I just need a musician. It's like
Yeah.
it's not how it works. you know and so luckily we learned just enough to get a beta built and improve that and learn alongside it, and then build a team of engineers around us.
Yeah. Dude, I think that's so cool because the number of people that are like, well, how do I build an app? Like,
Yeah.
do you know how to build an app? And I think they just think that they always need the engineer to go and do it. But I think you guys are a really cool testament. It's like, no, dude, go learn the skill, build a proof of concept, whether you use that to get venture capital or just to bootstrap it and like get people involved for equity or whatever it is. Like, go build it first. Like, go learn the skill, which I think is really, really cool.
Yeah, you're right. I get that a lot too, and there are a few rare examples where somebody just had an idea and they paid somebody to build it, and then they were able to kind of work their way through that. But it's very, very rare. It really is like trying to start a rock band, and you don't have any vocal talent, don't know how to play any instruments, or it's like trying to start a restaurant and you hate to cook and you don't have a chef. Like
Yeah.
it's the same thing. It's going to be tough.
Yeah. Um, Dude, I'm looking at the time and I want to make sure we pivot because I've been really intrigued to follow your story since we connected a couple months ago. Obviously, you got GreenPal, it's going really well. You're doing the digital nomad thing. You're in Miami right now. We were chopping it up before we pressed record about all the cool places you've lived. And I am I'm curious about, well, let's just dive straight to Miami because I want to spend some time here. We talked about like Miami has a crazy thriving entrepreneurial community. Um, but it also seems like it can be fairly polarizing from like a keeping up with the Joneses perspective or like striving for bigger things because you're just surrounded by them, which can be inspiring, but it can also probably lure people towards chasing dreams that aren't theirs. And I'm curious what your experience has been in Miami and how you are navigating that um, during your time there, whether it be longer term if you decide to stay or even just a month or two or whatever it looks like. How's that been for you?
Yeah, it truly is a paradox, at least for me, and one that I don't have figured out. On the one hand, you really do want to be exposed to bigger thinking, bigger goals, bigger dreams, because that's motivating. That causes you to level up. That causes you to get to the next level. And I've experienced that here in Miami. I've been here a month now, and you can't walk around 100 feet and not trip over three, four, $500,000 cars. You cross the bridge. There's a $400 million yacht passing underneath. It's motivating. It's inspiring. You see this level of success, and it's amazing. And I'm from Nashville, Tennessee, and there might be one guy in all of Nashville, Tennessee that has a Rolls Royce. In Miami, there's seven parked on the curb outside. And so, how do you reconcile that? And for me, that's like the good. I said, like, that's the good thing. That's the pros. It's like it's motivating in that sense, and not that like that's my ultimate goal or dream in life is to have those things, but it is motivating to be surrounded by people achieving that level of success.
Hmm.
Um, on the other hand, like it can turn your thinking into one of chasing dollars, chasing money, and a lot of times that isn't necessarily what's good for your entrepreneurial journey, because a lot of times if you chase dollars, they get further away and you end up making short-sighted decisions for the business. Really need to focus on serving customers. The dollars will come. So you really have to make sure your thinking is tuned and not distorted by that environment. And the other thing is, like, it can put you in this rat race kind of paradigm where you're always wanting the next level. And I've been through this when I was push mowing yards every day for 14
Yeah.
hours a day, coming home with grass all over me. I literally, I was like, if I can just get to where I don't have to mow any more yards, I will be happy. And then I got there, and I was like, well, if I can just get, that one neighborhood where I mow that one house and it's so beautiful and it's got the big pool in the back. If I can just live in that neighborhood, I'll be happy. And I got there. I got there by 30. I was living in the best neighborhood in town. And then after that, I was like, you know what? If I can just get a Ferrari and put my own pool in the backyard, I'll be happy. I did that. It didn't make me happy. And then I thought, okay, I just want to sell this business and live the good life, and that'll make me happy. And it didn't. And so it's like, if you get into this trap of I'll be happy when, I think it's never ending. It puts you into a cycle where it's like it's a rat race, and the only way to win that rat race is to get out of it.
Yeah.
So there's something to be said for not giving a shit about any of that stuff and going and living in Bali or something. But I've done that, and that gets boring. So the answer to your question is I don't know. It is a paradox. I think it's important to be cognizant of the two, ends of the spectrum, and figure out what end of the spectrum maybe you lie on at that given moment,
Hmm.
because I think it is an evolution, and I think it does evolve. And learning how to be happy with whatever level of success you've attained is good. But on the other hand, like one of my favorite quotes, General Patton, he says, if you're not gaining ground, you're losing ground. So if you're not living, you're dying. If you're not in expansion, you are in contraction. So if you aren't looking for that next business, looking for that next real estate deal, looking for that next goal, you really are going backwards. And so it's a strange paradox, and I certainly don't have the answer for it, but that's how I experience it.
Yeah. The whole I'll be happy when, I think most people struggle with that. Um, do you feel that you've gotten a good grasp on how to transition from I'll be happy when to I'll be happy then?
Yeah, well, one thing's for sure, I can tell you, I don't want to go backwards. And I'm very grateful because I was a C student in high school and barely graduated college with like a 2.5, and so I was not like cut out or gifted for any sort of high level of success. And not that I've achieved that yet, but
Mhm.
but the things I have been able to do are just, to me, still amazing that I even pulled them off. And so
Yeah.
so I don't want to go back. I don't want to go back to mowing grass or even managing people that do it.
Yeah.
So I know that, and I'm grateful for that. And so that does give me a sense of gratitude at any given moment. Um, but but the whole idea of placing your happiness in the future as tied to some goal is one that I haven't been able to unravel or unseat, because I am motivated. I do, I do want to have one of those big yachts. I do want to have my own plane. I do want these things,
Yeah.
and I think it's kind of fun chasing them. And thank God we live in the United States where we have all of this opportunity, and we live in an age where we can launch our own businesses easily and chase these goals, because these things weren't always possible, 10, 15, 20 years ago.
Yeah, it is a beautiful time, um, with incredible opportunity. And I think it really is like it's just maintaining that alignment, right? Like it's great to use these things for the motivation, but and we talked a lot about this before we pressed record here, but like this idea of making sure that your goals are actually your goals and you're
Mm,
not just pursuing it because Instagram told you to want it
right.
or like your sales manager told you to want it. Um, because otherwise it will lure you down a path that is not for you. And a metaphor that one of my mentors shared with me that made so much sense and like cut me deep was he's like, you never want to get to the top of a mountain and look over and realize that you climbed the wrong one,
It's
you
very
know?
true. It's
And
very true.
I think if we're not in tune with whose goals we're actually chasing, we're gonna be up the wrong mountain.
Yeah, and why you're doing it.
Yeah.
What is the motivation? Is it intrinsic? Is it something inside you, or is it extrinsic? Maybe you want to prove to somebody else that you can do it. I've been motivated by both those things.
Yeah.
You know,
Me too.
I had a chip on my shoulder coming out of high school and college because I wasn't the cool kid. I didn't get picked for the football team. I didn't get a date to prom. I didn't, I had something to prove. I wanted to prove I could build a big business. And guess what? When I'm hiring people to come work for me, I look for those same people. I look for those types of people that have something to prove. There's something inside of them. There's a chip on their shoulder, and their talent, their business, their profession is the way they do it. And so I look for that. Um, but it is in many ways a fool's errand because there is no end. I've
Yeah.
experienced that.
Yeah, it's just kind of just going until, right?
Yeah,
Which is
yeah,
exhausting if you're chasing the wrong thing.
right.
Then it's for nothing. So, um, Brian, before I ask you the last question, where can people hang out on, where do you hang out most on the internet, social media, websites, for GreenPal, like plug away, where could people find you and follow along?
Yeah, life's too short to mow your own yard. So just go to greenpal.com, sign up, you get free quotes. Anybody want to hit me up? I love to travel. Travel is a big passion of mine. So I share it all on Instagram. So, just shoot me a DM there, Bryan M. Clayton, and I'll hit you back.
Perfect. Guys, both of the, I love that tagline, by the way. It is too short.
It's
Um,
too short to smell like grass and gasoline.
I love it. Guys, both of those will be linked up in the show notes. Get connected, show some love. You know the deal. Brian, the last question I have for you. Going all the way back, 15 years old, getting forced to go and mow that lawn and being given that fantastic gift of learning how to get in that first 20 bucks, right? And getting the bug, building the business, growing it to over 150 employees, exiting, right? And then undertaking this nomad lifestyle, learning how to code, building GreenPal, right? Your 10-year overnight success. This entire window, right? What's been the biggest lesson that you've learned that has yielded the most results and had the biggest impact on your life and in your business?
Ooh, it's a good question. Maybe two things. One, first thing is just to not believe my own bullshit. Like I mentioned earlier, when I ran the blue collar business, I thought that's what I was. I was a blue collar guy. I can still to this day change your transmission out in your truck. And that's what I thought I was. So so I'm not an engineer. So I need somebody else to do that. So to not believe my own bullshit was an important lesson I learned in that transition. And the second thing that really has made sense to me now, with looking back 22 years, is just the how we are our business. Our business is us, and our personal habits, our personal daily habits, really do map to our business's success. And we don't rise to the level of our goals. We fall back to the level of our habits. And so a lot of times, we make these big goals and they almost don't matter. What matters is what are the habits, the processes, the systems, the
Yeah.
routines you're doing every single day to drive. What is the action, on a daily basis, hourly basis? That's made a lot of sense, particularly in the last 12 years. Just falling into the good habits, the good routines, and over time it does work itself out.
Boom. Brian, thanks for joining me, brother. I really enjoyed this.
Mike, I enjoyed it. Thanks for having me on.
100%.